That's pretty much the gist of it. It's about this chick that ends up with 10 ounces of coke that she has to sell to help get the guy who got it fronted to him out of jail. What the fuck is that? Is that a switchblade?
Yes it is.
Where the fuck did you get a switchblade? Well, it definitely wasn't from me. That's all the fuck I know.
Let's go with that.
Yeah, so... Hello everyone, and thank you for listening to Ask Me If I Give a Shit, also known as Amigas, the movie reviews podcast where we ask that fundamental question that so many others leave out: do I give a shit?
Do I really do?
Do I give a shit about these people? Do I give a shit about this story? Do I give a shit about what is happening to them? And today we're going to talk to you about a little film from 2016 called White Girl. This is a film that we give a shit about, that we think you should give a shit about, and today we're going to tell you why. So, the movie White Girl starts out on a bright, beautiful summer day in Brooklyn. It starts out as a moving van is pulling up in front of an apartment complex, and we see two hot girls in their hot girl summer outfits getting out of the moving van, and they start carrying stuff up the stairs. And as they're getting ready to go inside and take all this stuff up before they even start unloading the moving van, we see and we hear, more importantly, whistles and catcalls and some noises of admiration from across the street that are coming from the boy sitting on the corner across the street from them on this little corner here in Queens/Brooklyn. And yeah, so we see these girls carrying this stuff up the stairs, and they get out of the moving van and they finish unloading their moving van. They start moving into their apartment, and the first thing they do to break in their new apartment is they christen it like every good Christian should, by smoking weed in their apartment. They pack up a bowl, they start passing it around, and then they start just discussing the joys of their new place, like, hey man, this is awesome, we finally got our own rooms. And then, you know, the one girl says to the other, she's like, yeah, I'm so glad we've got our own rooms, but I'm gonna miss cuddling with you. And she's like, oh, but we can still cuddle, it's gonna be great. At this point in the movie, you definitely got the impression that these two roommates were like super duper friendly with each other, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, I cuddle with my girlfriends all the time sometimes, so this is perfectly normal in my book.
Is that a platonic thing, like, with girls? Like, because I feel like it's less weird to be for girls than to be in close contact with each other is. I mean, you know, heterosexual straight girls, it's less weird for them to be in close contact and proximity with each other than it is for guys, right? Like,
oh yeah,
you know, you're walking along at the mall and you got two guys that are walking next to each other. If they accidentally touch each other's hands, you're gonna be like, oh my god, leave me alone, I don't have cooties. Like, stop that, and we're not gay. But, you know, with girls, they don't give a shit. Girls,
no, we would be holding hands.
The next thing we see is this girl hops on the train and she's going to her little office job, and we can tell that she's got a job somewhere at, you know, some kind of art gallery or some kind of like really bougie New York place that gets in local artists and takes in their work, specifically painters, and
makes articles about it. I think she works for like a type of newspaper type thing.
So she's like helping to promote these local artists and stuff like that. So she works for like an arts and entertainment type of publication that tries to help new artists get discovered, like actual, like, you know, canvas and paint type of artists.
Yeah.
So the next thing we see is where she's on the train, she's going home, and they're back at the apartment, and suddenly these two white girls that just moved into this place are there at their little place in Brooklyn, and they have all of their little white friends over.
Housewarming
party, and they've even got your quintessential, like, young white people in college, you know, friends that are over there. They've got the stoner dude with the, like, circle glasses that looks like John Lennon, and he is unsurprisingly talking about how he got jacked for his skateboard.
Which wasn't even his skateboard.
You know, and we see all these people that are basically not from New York finding out the truth about what it can be like to live in New York and just in the big city. So, you know, they're passing around bongs and they're rolling up joints and they're burning it down and they're having a good time, and then all of a sudden, dun dun dun, they run out of marijuana.
Now, in my opinion, in this scene, if you're smoking that much, you should make sure you have more than ample supply.
I know, right? Like, if everybody's going to come over and it's going to be like that, it should be like that Ralphie May joke. It should be like, hey, you know, bring a sack or pass it back, right?
Exactly.
But, because this is white folks, they didn't necessarily fucking do that, did they? And I mean,
No, they literally probably these two girls, Leah and her roommate, probably went ahead and supplied the supply.
hey man, they supplied the place to like smoke the weed. I feel like that's kind of a rule too. If you supply the place to smoke the weed, if you're young and in college, like definitely it should be everyone else's job to bring that shit over there, right? Like you're not trying to just dole out for free,
Exactly. No, I mean, if I'm providing you a place to smoke,
you need to bring something
you
to
need
smoke.
to bring something to smoke. Yeah.
Most definitely, dude.
I shouldn't be supplying both of those.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, let me bring one thing or the other. Just like at a drinking party, you bring cups or you bring ice. You don't have to do both, right?
The drinks.
Or the drinks, right? Everybody has a job to do. You got to bring something to the table, and not just your stories when you're trying to have a good party. And, these two girls in their apartment, given that the party's already started and they had the one little hiccup of not enough chronic, our little homegirl, the blonde girl that comes into this place, and by the way, one of these chicks is a blonde girl, one of the others is a redhead, and they're both pretty fine. I'm going to be honest with you. That's why they were getting all those like noises of approval from those cat calls, those wolf howls, those multiple noises of approval for their physical looks from their neighbors outside. So yeah, given that she's a good looking girl and she's swag and bougie and has her own apartment in Brooklyn and she's already started this good party and she's got all this good stuff going and everybody's buzz is going and it's going well, being the good host that she is, she decides that, hey, we shouldn't just let the buzz die right here. We should try to do something to remedy this situation. So she looks out her window at the source of the noises of approval from the guys that are sitting on the corner, suspiciously always sitting on the corner. They're always outside.
Oh, yeah.
It's in the evening. It's late at night now. And just like
they're just sitting there.
And they're just sitting there just like they were in the early afternoon when they first pulled up. But they're still sitting out there chilling, and there's all these people that keep walking up and giving them handshakes. So, being a girl that's a college girl that apparently has some real-world street-smart intelligence in addition to her, I guess, book knowledge, she has a light bulb come on, and she says, hey, wait a minute. We don't have to be out of weed right now. We don't have to let the party die right now. She just goes, hey, they have weed. Let me go see if I can't get some. And, her people in the apartment are like, no, don't. But they're saying that, but they're not really meaning it. They're like, no,
they're like, be careful. You don't know what's going to go on.
Maybe it's not a good idea. As she's like walking out the door to go get it because, they're thinking that and shit, and they feel like they're supposed to say that. But deep down, they're like, oh, fuck, I wish we had some more bud, right?
Yeah.
So, she goes outside and she walks downstairs and she goes across the street and she sees these Spanish dudes sitting there in the corner. I think they were Puerto Rican, like Mexican or Puerto Rican. They're Spanish dudes and they're sitting outside all day and they're like literally like smoking weed like while they're out there. And she just kind of walks over and she's like, hey, what's up? And they're like, hey, what's up? And she's like, so like, do you know where I can get some weed? And the dude is pretty much like, what the fuck do you think this is? Do you think we're drug dealers? No, we can't keep weed. Fuck off, bitch. Get out of here. And she's like, oh my god, are you serious? She's like, I'm serious. It's a heart attack, bitch. Fuck off and get on. And she's like all stoned and then like totally had her high blown. And she's like turning around and walking away. And as she's doing that, he goes, hey, yo, ma. And she turns around and she's like, what? He pulls a blunt from behind his ear, lights it up and says, remember to say no to drugs, shorty. And then all his friends like laugh and do that thing behind him. And, she kind of walks on after she's been told to piss the fuck off. We don't know you like that. And his friends just kind of look at him and they're like, hey, man, you were wrong for that, dude. Like, that was fucked up. You could have been nice to that girl. And, he's kind of like, nah, whatever I'm going to do. I'm going to keep it gangster. Fuck her, So the next thing we see, she's at work.
Office. Yeah.
She's at work, right? She's back at the office. She's at work and she's sitting there on her computer and just doing whatever she does on the computer, whatever her assigned task was. And the boss man walks up to her, on the row of computers where all the people outside of the boss man's office sit, and he's like kind of teasing her a little bit. He's kind of joking with her. He's kind of like, hey, are you working really hard right now? And she's like, no, not particularly. And he's like, well, what the fuck do we pay you for then? And she's like, actually, you don't pay me, because I'm guessing this is like an internship, right? That's what I got from this. It's obviously a friendly thing. It's obviously like a friendly joke or whatever. And so she's just kind of like, okay, so what we should do then is, how about you come into my office and help me out out with something. I need to get your opinion on some new stuff that we got in. Because like you said, she's probably a blogger. And so he's just kind of trying to show her some new stuff that's come up in, new product, new work, new people they're promoting. And he wants her opinion on it. So she goes in and she sees this new like big canvas sitting on the floor. And she's looking at it. And to be honest, it was a horrible canvas. Like this shit was bad. It was a joke. And I like that bullshit. I like dumb modern art. Like I really do. Like,
but this one was
This shit was bad. This shit was bad. Like whatever the art was to this canvas was the shit that came out of his mouth to sell it to these people. That was the art form. It wasn't what he actually painted. And she's not a dumb chick at all. Like she's sitting there and she's looking at it and she's kind of like,
what the fuck am I looking at?
What the fuck am I looking at? And she's kind of, you can see it in her face, and this girl's name is Leah, by the way, right? We find that out some point in time when she's going outside to, chat with the homeboys about trying to get some smoke. They're like, no, Leah, don't. But anyway, so her name's Leah, and this all happens really fast. And she's at work, and she's standing there, and she's looking at this new thing that her boss just called her into his office to talk to her about. And you can just see from the expression on her face, like, shit, this is bad, but how do I say that in a nice way, I guess? Or how do I find something? Now, how am I going to sell this shit on a blog? Like, anyway, and as she turns around to say something to him, she notices her boss is tapping out a line of some yayo on his desk, and he takes himself a big old whiff of that marching powder. He has himself a nice little line of cocaine and does it right in front of her, and she's kind of like, acts like she just saw somebody naked, like by accident. She's like, turns around and tries to be all cool about it and, do whatever.
Yeah, she's like, I didn't see anything. I didn't hear anything. This is not going, I didn't.
This didn't happen. Like, I didn't just see my boss.
The three blind monkeys.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't just see my boss committing a felony over here, so I'm, because I want to keep working here, and you just can't call people out on their shit like that. And, so he goes, and then he says, oh, I'm sorry.
That was kind of rude of me.
How rude of me. Would you like some? And she kind of like looks one way and looks the other and making sure this ain't some joke like the shit out in the corner earlier. And she's like, yeah. And she goes down and she takes that snow straight to the dome, right? And she...
Quite frankly, as a woman, she should have pulled her hair back.
Oh, yeah. She did almost commit a little party foul there in her boss's office, didn't she? Because she got long hair. She got long blonde hair.
Yeah, she got long hair. Long
and
hair.
It was like all over the desk. Like there was a little forest curtain around this like little snow pile that she was down there cleaning up off her boss's desk.
Have some manners. Pull your hair back if you have long hair. Because you don't want nothing to hit the floor.
Exactly, especially after her boss just had manners. I mean, if somebody hands you a filet mignon, you don't want to just drop it on the floor, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, she goes ahead and she goes down the slope. She takes that snow straight to the dome and she gets this happy, nice look on her face, and you can tell it's some of that good, right? So, he's like, hey, that's cool, but P.S., fucking have another. Like, go ahead and get you some more, honey child. Go ahead. And you did not have to tell her twice, so she goes right in and she takes another run down that ski slope. She goes right on and gets herself another line. And she feels even better. She's looking good. You can see the euphoria and the good times hitting, and her dopamine receptors are in there firing off, and they're like, let the good times roll, right? And she's got this big old smile on her face, and she kind of looks at her boss, and to be quite frank, she pretty much gives him the look at this point, doesn't she?
Oh yeah, the come hither look.
I didn't catch it the first time because the scene moves kind of fast, like a lot faster than we're talking about it, but she definitely gives him the look, right?
Oh yeah, the
come and get it.
Yeah, the come and get it look. The bedroom eyes.
Exactly. She basically says the same thing to him with her face and her eyes that he just said to her about the cocaine. Oh, how rude of me. Would you like some? And, he was just as eager to get some of that white girl as she was to get some of that white girl. And that's exactly what happens. They get into it very, very quickly, and they start getting it on right there in her boss's office. And I gotta say, dude, like at this point in the movie, I was like, holy shit, where did this movie get made? This movie was like very, very racy. Like I've seen a lot of movies with explicit sex scenes. This one was super duper explicit.
Oh yeah, like this one would be stereotypical porn, this scene, technically speaking.
I mean, you're not lying. That's exactly the same thing I thought. So, this doesn't go on for very long. They're getting into it, and all of a sudden there's a knock at the boss's door, and so they knock it off, and they get their shit right and their clothes on and all that stuff. And, in walks the secretary, and Leah just has to sit there and pretend like she's doing something and looking at stuff. And, the secretary comes in, and she's like, oh, hey, you got so and such a meeting at this time, and I just wanted to make sure you knew. And he's like, oh, yeah, thanks for reminding me of that. I sure do appreciate appreciate it. And P.S. Have you met Leah? This is Leah. Check out Leah. And she's like, hi, how are you doing? And, the secretary gives this look on her face. You can totally tell that she knew what was up. She
like this is not the first time she interrupted something.
Oh, obviously not. And she at least definitely knows what type of person he is. And she knew what was up. She definitely knew what was up. You could definitely tell it from the look on her face. So the next thing we see is Leah's riding home on the train, and she's, just kind of tired and eating a piece of pizza, and she's getting gawked at by, another person on the train that's looking at her and stuff. And then, she gets back to her neighborhood, and she goes in the store to pick up some beer on her way home. And while she's in the store picking up some beer, she runs into that same fucking Puerto Rican dude that shut her down and made her all embarrassed the other night when he's like, nah, fuck off. I don't know anything about weed, as he's like smoking some and got some behind his ear and shit. And this time, it's a very different interaction with him, right?
Oh yeah, it's actually a positive one.
Yeah, because he actually like flirts with her a little bit, and he asks her name and how, and stuff like that. And he tells her that, yeah, my name's Blue. And she's like, is that your real name? And he's like, yeah, sure it is. But it goes well, it goes nice. And so the next thing we see after that is she's walking into her apartment to go home, and as she walks in through the open door, the door stays open for a little bit longer than it would have if somebody walks in by themselves, because she doesn't just walk in by herself. As the door's open, in walks Blue behind her. She walks in, says hey to her roommate, and then her roommate looks and sees Blue walking in, and then her roommate like pulls her to the side, right? She's like,
what is he doing here? He's a dealer.
She's like, yeah, what's he doing here? That guy's probably a drug dealer. I don't know that we should have people like that in our apartment. And she's like, oh, please, bitch, of course he's a drug dealer. Just chill. Just like, why do you gotta be like that? He's a drug dealer. He's got lots of money. He's not gonna steal anything from our place. And her roommate's like,
I'm still gonna go hide my purse, right?
Yeah, that's pretty much what she says. So he's only been there for a few minutes, and all of a sudden they start hear some hooting and hollering noises out the window. And she goes over and looks out the window, and it is our buddy Blue's homeboys from the corner. They're all like, yo, what's up? Are you guys up there having a party without us? And she's like, no, you can come on up, damn it. And they do. They run right out of the fire escape. They climb up into the apartment, and
I think the comment that he made was, they're just mad that I was the one that got into the tower first.
Oh yeah, that's what Blue says. He goes, yeah, my buddies out there are just mad that I got into the castle first, So next thing we know, it's all of the Spanish homeboys over there with the two white girls, and they are just chopping it up, throwing it in the Dutch, rolling it up, passing it around, and smoking that loud. They are just having a good little time with their weed party, and she starts just kind of questioning them and asking them stuff and getting to know them and sharing a little bit about herself, and her roommates kind of tell her some things about her, and they're like, yeah, no, we're drug dealers, we're hustlers, we be out there just doing that shit. And she's like, well, that's cool. Have you guys got like, I don't know, like shrooms or whatever? And her roommate's like, oh yeah, you should definitely hook her up with some shrooms, because she like really likes drugs, bruh. And they're like, no, we don't have shrooms. We don't sell that hippie shit. We fucking sling coke and heroin and, smokable cocaine and shit like that. Like, we got that good.
And weed.
And weed, of course. So, like, we just smoke weed all day, but we are out there selling that, that white net brown and all that shit. So she's like, well, fucking word, that's cool. Hook me up, right? Like, what you got for, some coke, right? And as soon as she starts talking to him about the white girl, old boy Blue gets up and storms out like he feels some type of way and just leave. And his homeboys are like, oh yeah, this motherfucker's always crying and shit and getting in his feelings and whatever, he's just weird like that or whatever. So Leah gets up, she never completes the the interaction transaction about the substances in question with his homeboy. She gets up and follows him out, and of course he's gone up to the roof, and she goes up to the roof with him. And while they're up there on the roof, he kind of tells her, look, I don't fuck with people that do that shit. And she's like, but you sell it. And he's like, yeah, but I don't fuck with people that do that shit, like, damn. And she's like, okay. So she lights up a cigarette, and basically she just comes on to him, and they end up fucking on the roof, right?
Yeah, I think there was something about, oh yeah, this is my roof now and whatnot, but still.
Yeah, there's some good dialogue about it, but basically they end up fucking on the roof. And this too is a pretty explicit scene. Like, it's not quite as explicit as the close-up that we got a little glimpse of in the scene in her boss's office, but this is still a pretty explicit scene, you know?
Oh yeah.
Most definitely. So, they finish that up, and the next thing we see is Leah back at work. And while she's at work, she's just kind of sitting there on her computer and opening a package from her mom, a little care package that she sent her with some, like, soaps and sponges and shit like that. And her boss comes up to her and he's all like, hey, check it out. We got this, this art-related work party that's going on tonight, and you're going to be there, aren't you? And she's like, no, actually, I'm not, because I have to unpack my apartment. He's like, you got to unpack your apartment. And then he totally disrespects her, and he's like, yeah,
grabs the card her mom sent.
Reads it, is belittling about it, tries to embarrass her about it, and he's like, okay, yeah, fucking, I'll see you tonight, after she just told her I'm not going. So he just totally oversteps her boundaries and tells her she's expected to be there, and that is what happens.
But before that, she meets up with Blue and his gang, and
yeah, the next thing we see is she's like, she goes home after work, and as she's walking into her apartment, of course, Blue is still outside with his homeboys, and so she walks up to talk to him across the street before she goes into her apartment, and he starts talking, and he asking her questions like, hey, do you got a man? You seem like you're pretty hot. She is pretty hot, to be honest, but he's like, you seem pretty hot, like you seem like the type of chick that has a man, right? So, what's up, like what's going on, what's good? And she's like, well, why do you think I got a man? And he's like, well, I don't know, you just, like I said, seem like the type of chick that does. And she's like, no, I don't have a man. He's like, well, okay, that's great, because I want to be your man. I want to take care of you. And she's like, I don't need anybody to take care of me. He's like, oh, but you need me to take care of you, homegirl. And so, she decides to hang with him for a little bit before she ends up, has to go off to that thing at work later that afternoon. So they go down the block, they end up at a barbershop, and he runs into the barbershop real quick. And if y'all don't know anything about barbershops, basically barbershops are a front for not just services, but also products, okay? We'll just put it to you that way. And he runs into the barbershop and he runs back out, and he basically just picked up a bunch of work. So they go back to the apartment, and while they're at the apartment, he is like showing her like what he does and shit. He's like, said he wants her to be his girl, so he's keeping it 100 with her. He's like showing her all the stuff that he has, and he's showing her like the bagged up coke, and he's like, yeah, these are 20 sacks, I sling these for 20. And she looks at it and holds it up, and she's like, dude, you could get $60 for this. What the fuck are you doing selling this for $20? And he's like, well, obviously he didn't know that. You can tell he's a little embarrassed in this scene, but she's like, look, okay, listen, you should come with me to a party in Chinatown tonight. You could get rid of all of this shit down there.
And then he goes, I don't fuck with the city.
He says, yeah, no, I don't fuck with the city like that. I just stay over here in, the boroughs over here in, Queens/Brooklyn, and I don't be doing that shit. And she basically just talks him into doing it. Like, she doesn't have to say much, because, she's a hot blonde chick, basically, and
stereotypical blonde. Like, she's not even a real blonde. It's obviously a dye job, but still she rocking it, and she is rocking it, and he likes her, and she's rocking with him. And so, long story short, they end up at this little party in this bougie ass bar in Chinatown with all these art people around. And as she's going into the bar, she's all like, hey, check it out, they've got coke. And he's kind of looking around like, bitch, don't say that to you. Wow, damn, what are you thinking? But no one in the bar gives a fuck. And, it kind of just stands there silent. She goes off to the bathroom with her homegirls, and old Blue is left standing there by her boss. Like, he's standing there by her boss, who, as we know, is a connoisseur of la cocaína. And he's like, stands there and pauses for a second. And he's like, I'll take a bag. And so, Blue kind of looks one way and the other, and then he pulls one out of his pocket and he shows it to him, and he takes her advice. He's like, yo, this is 60. And he kind of holds it up. He looks at it, shows it to the bartender. He's like, hey, buddy, does this look like a 60 to you? And he goes, yeah, that looks like a good 60 to me, buddy. You should definitely get that. And Blue at this point is like, dude, motherfucker, quit tripping. Like, are you gonna selling it, or are you gonna buy it? Like, what the fuck? Stop playing. So he goes, no, hell yeah, not only am I gonna buy it, I'll take 3 and give it to me. And Blue's like, fucking word, that's great. Next thing we do, we cut to a scene. We see Leah in the bathroom with her friends, and guess what they're doing? They are going skiing in the summertime in Brooklyn. They're chopping up rails on the bathroom counter, and they are in there getting straight up lit, okay? And I don't remember exactly how it went after that, but basically what happens, because she'd already told Blue at this point, cause she kind of implied to him, okay, yeah, no, I'm not gonna do coke, but she's in the bathroom doing coke. And they come back out of the bathroom, and Leah gets on the dance floor. Of course, she's feeling great. She's totally feeling like dancing for some damn reason after she came out of the bathroom this time, and she starts tearing it up on the dance floor with Blue. And as we just kind of see a montage of the rest of the night, and a bunch of hand-to-hands take
place. And long story short, Leah was correct that they would definitely be able to get rid of all of their work, and that's exactly what happens. They get rid of every single bag. And the next thing it cuts to is there's Blue and Leah and Leah's roommate, and they're in their taxi and they're going home to Brooklyn. And as they're pulling up in front of the apartment, Blue suddenly gets an idea. He's like, hey man, we just had a great night of business. Let's go holler at the big man wholesaler. Let's go to Costco. Let's go to the Costco of drugs, so to speak, and get ourselves a bulk amount, and let's try to not only do this again, but let's try to do this even bigger than we did. And his homeboys are like, look man, we don't fuck with that Costco. We're not going up there. That's a bad idea. That's just asking for shit and asking for trouble, and we're not doing it. And so he kicks him out of the car, and they end up going anyway. It's just him and Leah. And then of course they end up getting it on in the back seat of the taxi on the way up there. And when they get there, Blue gets out, he goes inside, and Leah's just kind of sitting outside on the steps, right? And as she's sitting outside on the steps, just she finds a cigarette, and she realizes she doesn't have a light. And this dude walks up to her, this hood type of dude. He walks up to her and he's like, yo ma, what you doing over here? This is not the neighborhood you should be in. What are you doing over here? And she kind of tries to keep it gangster, as gangster as you can, to be like a tiny little white girl in the hood. And she's like, oh, what are you doing over here? Like, whatever. And he's like, all right, whatever. And he lights her cigarette and kind of smirks at her, and then he walks off and leaves. And no sooner does he leave and go around the block, then Blue comes out of the plug's house, and he's like, listen, I know we weren't planning to do this, but I need you to come inside for a minute. And so she's like, all right, cool. He's like, look, just be cool, just whatever.
So wait a minute, what is actually going on here? Why is the plug that she's never met before asking her to come in and meet him?
You know that Yo Gotti song where he's like, if you a loyal soldier, then I might front you a whole thing, but first I need to know your mama staying with your whole name.
Yeah, but people catching cases, copping pleas, and giving long names, fucking up the whole thing. Yeah, it's a cold game.
Yeah, that's the one. So the reason that our buddy Lloyd wanted for Leah to go inside and meet him is exactly the same reason that Yo Gotti wanted to know where your mama lives before he gives you a kilogram of some coca. Because if he's gonna just hand over $30,000 to $40,000 worth of shit that he can't exactly go report to like regular authorities if you don't show back up with his money, he needs to be able to come after something that you love and value. It's kind of like collateral for a loan. It's like when you give your car title up to get a few $1,000s. It's kind of like that.
Like the loan sharks?
Exactly like the loan sharks, except this is a little bit more serious.
Damn.
They go inside and they see this, they see the plug, this big scary gangster dude, and he's kind of telling Blue like, look man, I don't know what you think you're doing coming up here on all this bullshit, and I don't get a good feeling about this, and I don't know what the fuck is up, so you need to probably just get out of here. And he's like, no, look man, you've known me a long time and you can do this. And he sees Leah and he's like, man, she's very pretty, and he likes her a lot. You can tell from the look on his face and in his eyes. And he's like, hey, you come over here for a second. And he kind of pulls her over to him on his lap, and while she's sitting there in the plug's lap, he points at this big old pile of coke that's sitting there on his table, and he's like, go ahead. And she's like,
you won't want me to
do a line? She's like, well, since you twisted my arm, I guess, and she picks up the $100 bill that's rolled up as a straw, and she takes a big old whiff of that shit, right? And then another one, and then she passes the straw back to him, and then he gets him some, and then suddenly everything's good again. They start talking about like, look, no, we're cool. And he's like, no, seriously, you can trust this girl for white people. And like, he's, Blue's sharing his business plan with the plug. He's kind of telling him how he just sold out the night before and why he, what's going on. He's like, look, this is going to be good for you. It's going to be good for me. I just need you to front me some work, right? And so the plug sits down and he thinks about it for a minute, and he goes, all right, buddy, I'll do it, but are you sure you need this much? And he's like, yeah, no, I definitely need that much. So he pulls out the scale and he weighs him out over half a pound on the clock, and they bag it up and they hand it off, and Blue and Leah leave the plug's house, and they go to this little restaurant, and they sit there and they get food and drinks, and they're talking to each other and just kind of having a good time. And all of a sudden
I guess, his phone went off. Or
No, a customer from earlier that's like tweaking out.
Oh, yeah. So somebody comes up, like, what does he do? Knock on the window or something?
Yeah.
Okay, so, he sees this guy come up and he knocks in the window. Blue knows what time it is. And he's like, hey, hold on a second, homegirl. I got to run outside and make a play real quick. And so, he goes outside and he does that. And she just kind of sitting there chilling and stuff and waiting for him to come back in. And as she's looking out the window waiting for him to come back in, all of a sudden somebody grabs him from behind and holds his arms and slams him up against the window like he's about to be handcuffed. And he is about to be handcuffed, and the guy holding him up against the wall and pushing him into the window is the same dude that had just walked up to her while she was sitting on the plug's front porch and telling her, yeah, it's 12, homie. Like, I guess they only say 12 in Atlanta, so it's 5-0 in New York City, right? But yeah, it's 5-0, right? So it's the police, y'all, and he, turns out this dude that was creeping on her was a fucking undercover son of a bitch. Now he's busting her boyfriend and putting him up against the glass, and they call
searching him and
searching him, and he finds a little bit of product on him, and then he calls the actual regular police units in the uniforms, and they come and they pick him up and they look at the little bags that he had in his pocket and they throw him in the back of the cruiser, and that's it. Next thing we see after that is she looks around and she realizes that the 10 ounces that they just picked up off of the plug, she kind of snatches it up and she puts it in her purse and she gets the fuck out of there immediately. And then she goes home and she samples some of the product herself because she's nervous and trying to calm down and stuff. I don't know why you would do cocaine when you're trying to calm down, but that's what she does.
Yeah, why would you do that if you're having a near panic attack, just seeing a guy that you're in a relationship with just starting out getting arrested? Yeah, that doesn't make sense to me.
I guess the implication is that was all that she had around and she had to do something, right? I mean, I guess they weren't there picking up 10 ounces of weed, so I guess she just had to fuck with what she had. So the next thing we see is she is there for a visitation at Rikers Island. She's there lining up against the wall being shit on by some Irish motherfucker cop that's telling everybody, you all need to act right or I'll kick you all out, my authority. And then she ends up sitting down at a table with him in the little visitation area and they're talking and he's like, oh my god, I should have listened to my homeboys and they told me not to go to that Costco. I should have fucking known that it was hot up there and that
it's gonna be 20 years.
I'm gonna do 20 years. That's mandatory minimum for 10 ounces for how much I had. And she's like, wait a minute, they didn't catch you with 10 ounces because I still have the 10 ounces. And he's like, oh my god, you do? That's fucking amazing. That means I have a chance. And he's like, okay, look, just first off, take that shit back to Lloyd the plug immediately. Make sure you get that shit back to him and tell him that I just got jammed up on some other kind of bullshit and that I'm not gonna say anything in here and don't worry about it. And then he tells her, P.S. it's good that they didn't catch me with that much, but this is still my third strike for the little bit that they did catch me with, so I'm gonna be up here for a minute and I don't know what to tell you, but it sucks and that's what's up. And she's like,
I can go get a lawyer.
We'll figure something out. You don't have to be stuck here. We'll figure something out. And he's like, what are you going to figure out? And she's like, look, trust me, I always figure something out. And then she flashes them and then she kisses them and then she leaves because, she wild like that or whatever. So the next thing we see is she is with her little roommate and they are trying to do what she just told Blue that she would. And she's being kind of reckless at this point, but as they're walking to Boyd's house, her homegirl, her roommate, Katie, is like, look, bitch, there is literally half a brick of coke hanging out of your purse, little over half a brick.
Yeah.
Fucking tighten up, homie. And so she does, and they walk across the street and they're about to go into his house, and as they're about to walk into his house, all of a sudden she sees someone walking down the street, and it's that same fucking snitch, that same son of a bitch that just got her man jammed up, and he recognizes her immediately because she just came across his radar. And then she does a very intelligent thing and she turns around, walks the fuck away, and gets out of there immediately.
Oh yeah. And she even tells her roommate,
follow my lead, let's get the fuck out of here, we need to go right goddamn now. So they do. And the next thing we see after that is she is
going to the lawyer's office.
The next thing we see after that is she's in an elevator going up in a building somewhere, and she's taking a big key bump of the shit that she's still holding. And she walks into a lawyer's office and she explains what happened. And this lawyer pretty much sizes her up immediately. But he tells her, like, okay, look, because your friend has strikes against him and because of the amount that they did catch him with, he's looking at about 5 years of real time, to be honest with you. But you go ahead and pay the retainer and I'll get it started. That'll be the starting fee. And then we'll see what we can do from there, right? And she's like, okay, great. How much is the retainer? He's like, $2,500. And she's like, okay, how about I get that to you tomorrow? And then this guy keeps his poker face on super great because he wasn't expecting her to, like, you know, be able to do that. But
nope, not at all.
Not at all. But he doesn't flinch in his joy at the money coming into his pocket. And he just says, oh yeah, that would be great. Tomorrow be just fine. I'd be happy to get started on this tomorrow after you pay me. So next thing we see, she's back at work, and while she's at work, she's also carrying work, and she walks right into her boss's office and she pulls out the 10 ounces of work and she says, hey, do you want to buy this? I got a shit ton. And he's like, what the fuck are you doing? Shut the door, bitch. And he gets up and shuts the door
and all this other stuff.
Right. And then he's like, what the fuck are you doing up here? Like, are you trafficking now? 10 ounces? Damn, I don't need 10 ounces. Shit, bitch. And she's like, okay, well, how about buy 5 ounces for this much? And he's like, no, I don't need 5 ounces either. Even though I sniff a lot of that shit, I don't need 5 fucking ounces. And she's like, okay, well, how about like 2 ounces for 3,000? Will you do 2 ounces for 3,000? And he's like, well, okay, I guess so. I guess I can do that. And she's like, great, that's awesome. So she like puts the brick down on the table and she starts marking it out with like little chop lines on it. And he's like, wow, that's really scientific there, Leah. She's like, whatever, it's just this much in a fraction. And she chops off part of the brick. She bags it up and she presumably collects 3 stacks from her old boss. And then she leaves. And the next thing we see after that is she is at home getting to work immediately on getting that work sold. She's sitting around with her roommate and the homeboys from across the street and they are bagging up. And it's at this scene that I gotta say she really did some pretty gangster shit in this scene.
The 0.8, right?
Oh, hell yeah. Like, she's doing some actual, like, really smart marketing shit at this point in the movie because as they're sitting there and they're bagging up these sacks of work, as they're putting together these sacks of cocaine, she's telling her roommate and the homeboy, she's like, look, it's a gram, but we're only going to put a 0.8 in there, not a 1.0. We're going to put a 0.8 in there because, let's face it, every time you do that, every 5 times you do that, you get another one. That's real money, especially when you're talking, that's real money even if you're talking about weed grams. It's definitely money when you're talking about coke grams, okay? And then she does another thing that's really intelligent in this scene, and she decides not to step on this shit. They don't cut it, they don't stretch it out, they just keep it real and cut it a little bit short. So they bag up all the work, and the next thing we see is she doesn't just take it to the bougie Chinatown bar, she takes it to the best place you could possibly go to get rid of a lot of good drugs fast. She goes to
a gay bar.
A gay bar. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever heard that Ralphie May stand-up bit about gay drugs, but it's the straight up fucking truth. So, at this point, the movie goes on and gets crazier from here. Like, we literally had to go further into this movie than we do for a lot of them just to give you a good gist of the story, a good wind-up and a pitch. And we'd love to tell you more about what happens next, but we don't do spoilers on this podcast, and we don't want to ruin it for you.
We don't.
We're trying to give you something in addition to the movie itself, so that's pretty much the gist of it. It's about this chick that ends up with 10 ounces of coke that she has to sell to help get the guy who got it fronted to him out of jail. That is the gist of White Girl. It's about a white girl moving white girl in fucking Brooklyn, of all places, okay? Holy shit, Danny, I didn't realize until we went back and watched this movie the second time, like we do before we actually go and talk about it for this podcast, how much stuff happens, how quickly in this movie, am I right?
Oh yeah, it moves very fast, despite everything.
And it's not a long movie either, right? Like, this movie is only like an hour and 30 minutes long, but there's not a single wasted scene in it. Like, everything that happens in this movie is telling you something. There's no bullshit. There is literally no filler in this movie.
Oh yeah, there's micro stuff going on in the background that you have to pay attention to. The little snide comments and everything with the talking and everything with the characters. Oh yeah.
And their expressions and their facial expressions and all that stuff in between them. So, yeah, it's a lot going on in this movie. Definitely don't go and leave the room while this movie is playing if you're watching it. And
On that note, let me just say, Danny, let's get to our first question. So, our first question that we often ask every time that we remember it anyway is, Danny, what genre of movie would you say that this is?
I guess drama would be the best terminology for this one.
It's most definitely a drama. I don't see any other elements in this one. It's straight up a drama, like completely and totally 100%.
Well, that and a slice of life would be another one.
Yeah, a slice of life, and that's kind of drama too. It's like definitely. I guess you could say there's other kinds of drama, like there's a comedy drama and shit like that, but this is just a slice of life drama for sure, and it's a really good one, and especially to make it onto our What the Fuck Did I Just Watch as a number one.
Oh yeah, this is the first episode of the first season.
And it's dope, right? So, Danny, our second question that we always ask, and probably our most quintessential question that we ask is, do I care about these people? Do you care about these people, Danny?
Not at first, but as you get to know them, you develop that over the time of the story.
Yeah, I really agree with that, because I didn't care about them at first either. As a matter of fact, I thought these were frankly just some overprivileged white bitches, and therefore I was inclined to not care about them. But, our homegirl Leah, she kind of earned it. Just like she earned the respect of Blue's homies that was, standing on the corner. She earned my respect too. She really did. So, do I care about what's happening to these people?
Sort of.
It took a second because I wasn't sure what was going on.
That's the whole point. It takes you a minute to actually understand what she's trying to do.
Yeah, it does. And you're wondering where this is going to go, right? Because I felt like I kind of underestimated her a little bit. Like, I really didn't see her being this much of a down-ass bitch when I first saw her, doing her thing.
Especially for someone that she just met.
I think a lot of chicks would have just said, holy shit, I got 10 ounces of coke. I'm just going to run off with this shit and try to sell it, and I'm going to snort the rest, and that's it, right? Like, yeah, peace out. But she didn't do that. She really did have some loyalty. Like, she really was.
Oh, yeah. She tried to return it, and we'd see the fallout from that.
And not only that, but she didn't fuck around and try too hard to return it, because if she tried too hard to return it, she probably would have ended up dead, right?
Oh, yeah, or worse. Or
worse, and maybe gotten not only herself killed, but probably Blue also.
Oh, yeah.
Most definitely. So, does it capture my attention within the first 20 minutes?
Yeah.
I'm a straight male, so it was kind of hard for this not to catch my attention, just like
that ass.
Yeah, that ass, dude. It was hard for it, just like it was hard for it not to catch the attention of the homeboy standing on the block that was, giving all those supportive noises and shit. I'm no better than them. It definitely captured my interest on a shallow level, but yeah, no, it was also sincerely captured, because I felt like, even though, it's visually pleasing, I felt like something good was going to happen. I felt like it was going to get me on another level too. Like, it was that ass for sure, but I had a feeling it was going to go somewhere beyond that and be something else afterwards.
It captured my attention when she decided to go, being brand new to the block, going across the street to the known drug dealers and asking for weed.
That's some dope ass shit, right? He kind of shut her down because she was a female, and I guess probably because he liked her. But if this had just been like a straight dude that had moved in and just knew what was up and knew his way around the world and around the block and around the the black market and shit like that, that would have been no problem. Like, if it was just a dude that had gone over there and said, hey, yo, okay, hook me up, man, we'll talk, what's up with the green, what's going on with that loud, like, he would have just been like, yeah, homie, it's 10 a G, right?
Yeah, seriously, that's how it works.
Especially since this is 2016, and that's exactly when, 20 a G became 10 a G, am I right?
Oh, yeah.
For sure. So, did you think that the acting was good in this movie?
Oh yeah, each of the characters and the actors that played their parts perfectly well.
This acting is really underrated in this movie, and I can say that for sure because I liked this movie enough the first time to say, hey, this should be our number one movie on our podcast. And when I watched it the second time as we were reviewing it, just to refresh ourselves before we talked about it, I found myself noticing, like, damn, this is a lot of subtlety. Just like I said, like when she was hitting the yayo in the boss man's office and that look she gave him, like, man, it takes a good actress to be able to communicate that. And a lot is communicated through facial expressions in this movie. I felt
and
like,
body language. We can't forget the body language.
And body language, man. Like, especially when she's on the roof and that little move she does where she's like holding the cigarette and she puts her hand while she's holding the cigarette between her fingers on his leg. And she does that little thing with her thumb just to communicate, like, yeah, buddy, you can get it. Definitely there was some acting through body language going on in this movie. Is there anything I like about the world in which this movie is set?
Well, it's New York.
It's New York, dude, and it's not just like touristy Manhattan, New York. This is like real
underbelly.
Hell yeah, this is like literally between Brooklyn and Queens. And I've been to New York before, and when I was in New York, I stayed in Richmond Hill, which is 121st Street, which is Queens. So it's actually pretty far away from where they're on the border right here. But and I didn't actually go to Brooklyn when I was in New York, but let me just tell you, Queens is real. I can only assume from what New Yorkers have told me that Brooklyn is equally, if not more real than Queens, and so they couldn't have kept it more legit than to say that it's like literally on the borderline. And every time I said in this episode, it's Brooklyn/Queens, it's because if you catch the moment in this movie, it's like literally on the borderline. That's in context. That's not just me being an idiot. So, next, let me just ask you, do I like the style, and did you like the style in which this movie was made?
I mean, it is technically a gangster movie, so yes.
Yeah, I would say at first, my initial thing to say is that the style in this movie was pretty unremarkable. But honestly, the style in this movie is fantastic, and it's a little bit underrated because, like I just said, before we even started these questions, there is so much that happens so quickly, and it really is like straight up no wasted time, no wasted scenes. Every scene teaches you something, and it doesn't try too hard. So I guess you would say it is understated and to the point, and it was just well made in general.
Well, like Boyne and Case, when they're moving in, like for the first scene,
they let you know what those homeboys making them catcalls are seeing, because you see it from their perspective, right?
Oh yeah, not only that, but you see Blue checking Leah out the first time anyway.
Absolutely. Like, this movie starts out like a fucking Drake song, like it's like telling about some girl he saw and knew that he wanted her the first time he saw her, right?
Oh yeah.
Straight up, this whole movie is kind of a Drake song, isn't it? Like, it's kind of a low budget movie because it didn't make it to a lot of places. I'm sure there's some people that probably actually haven't heard of this, or whatever, but this was a badass movie that, especially for whatever they spent for it. I enjoyed it thoroughly. So, let me ask you this, Danny, could I watch this movie with my family? Maybe if I hate myself, right, and I just want to make them disappointed in me.
Or scare them away.
Like, if I, have a good relationship with my family and I want it to somehow be bad all of a sudden, this would be a great movie to watch. So,
oh, yeah, because of the scenes that are involved in
because that's our number one thing in all the movies on this season. That's pretty much our main criteria for evaluating whether or not we would watch it with our family is what is the sexual content like. And just like in the movie Cam, the sexual content in this movie is way too intense and way too frequent to possibly watch with my family.
Which, by the way, we are reviewing Cam later on this season.
Most definitely. And check that out. Check out that movie. Check it out by yourself. Don't check it out with your family.
We'll
Spoiler
explain
alert,
further.
Don't check it out with your family. And much like the movie Cam, I felt like the sexual content in this movie, it passed it for me because I look down on a movie if I feel like the sexual content is trying to sell me a bullshit movie. Like, if it's not that good of a movie and it's not that good of a story and if it doesn't further the plot, and all of the sex, even though it was a lot and frequent and very graphic, it did further the plot. It was kind of essential to the plot of this movie, and that's why I give this movie a pass on that.
And I can understand that. I really can.
Like, for sure, right? So let me ask you this: is there a moral to this story?
Do as you're told,
and be a person of your word and keep it 100 with people.
Oh, yeah. Or at least try to let someone know what's going on.
Yeah, and I guess another moral to this story would be that even people that are 100% down for you in terms of their loyalty and their dedication to you, they don't always have the capability of following through as much as you hope they will. Someone can really have your best interest at heart, and they can really love you, and they can really care about you, just like Leah did for her, her love interest for Blue in this story. But that doesn't mean that she has the wisdom. Even though she had a lot of intelligence, she didn't necessarily have the wisdom to work this through, or the life experience. And wisdom and life experience are kind of inextricably connected, right? Like, it's kind of hard to have one without the other.
Oh, yeah. So she probably does have some life experience because of the way that she talks about the drugs. But that's all
Oh,
her
no, she
life.
definitely knew what was up in that street
but
shit. She was badass when it came to that.
Yeah, but that's
she had a
it.
natural talent for
That's
that.
it.
But that's it. And later on in this movie, after the point at which we finished talking about it, you really see how her lack of life experience contributes to
A lot of shit.
a lot of shit in this movie. Because her intelligence gets her very far, but just genuine intuition and intelligence can only take you so far. So I would say that's a moral of the story. So the two morals that I see is that someone's ability to be loyal to you is connected not just to their heart, but also to their life experience and their intelligence. Intuition can only take you so far, I guess I would say.
Yeah, that would be
second.
the best thing to say is that your intuition and your sort of gut feeling will be able to help you out too.
Most definitely. Most definitely. So our next question is, did it give you context within the first 5 minutes?
I want to say no.
Did it give me context in the first 5 minutes? No. It told me where we are and what's going on, but I had no idea what was going to happen.
At 5 minutes in, I thought it was actually a college movie.
I did too. I really did too. And I thought it was going to be one of those like decent but kind of lame slice of life movies, which is just like, oh, random shit happens in college and here's some random shit. And the truth is, this was actually a really well developed plot that it took 40 minutes into this movie for me to really know what's going on, because this movie is about a girl that falls in love with a drug dealer and starts helping him expand his business, and then he gets jammed up and then she starts running the business to help him get out of the jam. But I didn't know that until 40 minutes in, right?
Yeah, because we have to build up each character.
And they didn't waste any time in teaching that.
No.
Like they really didn't drag it out to get to that point. Everything they told us up until that point was relevant. There's not a single scene in this movie that isn't building to, where they're going. But it took a while to get there. Even and again, this movie's only an hour and 30 minutes, so there's no wasted time in it. It's not gonna, waste your time. But 20 minutes, no. 40 minutes, yes.
Yeah, because you have to, again, the plot has to be built first, and the character development has to be there.
It does.
Because don't forget, if in the first interaction between Leah and Blue, they went ahead and did everything that they were supposed to, there wouldn't have really been that good of a movie.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if it had taken only 20 minutes for them to give me context, I don't think I would have liked it as much. And that's kind of rare, and that is a part of what makes this movie a gem, is that they've really put a lot into this shit. So, at 20 minutes, no, you don't have enough context in 20 minutes, but at twice that much, you definitely do. So let me ask you this. Did this movie have an ending, or did it just quit?
It had an ending.
It had a banger of an ending, right? Like, just as much as it builds to the general plot, just as much as it winds up like a roller coaster climbs up that hill before it drops and starts going off, this movie builds in the beginning with the end in mind, like, because the ending of this movie is great. Like, every scene, just as much as it builds towards the plot, equally builds towards the ending. And y'all gotta watch this movie because you're gonna want to know how it ends, I promise you.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Most definitely. So, here's our next question. Is it believable or not?
Yeah, the way that everything
100%.
Everything in the way that it was portrayed looks like it was lived by someone at some point.
And that's part of what makes this a really good drama, right? Is that it's not a sci-fi, it's not a horror. We don't have to critique it in some kind of alternate world. It's believable in the world that we're in.
Oh yeah.
Like, straight up, and I promise you.
Again, slice of life, genre.
Exactly. And like you said, this is not just somebody's story. This is a lot of people's story. This is kind of an everyman story, because hot girl is useful to drug dealer and gets in crazy shit. There's a lot of girls out there that could tell you that story. And by the way, if you're one of those girls, hit us up at amigasmovies@gmail.com and let us know what you thought of this movie. That is am11gasmovies@gmail.com. Holler at us. So, here's a good question. Was there a good twist to this movie?
There were several twists in this one, actually.
There were several twists to this movie. All the subplots come together, and again, like I kind of implied just a minute ago, the twist at the end was the best.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely.
Because the way this all happened at the end, it was inevitable.
It was a bittersweet moment.
Oh, absolutely. Even though it was inevitable, though, I didn't see it coming.
No, it was one of those out of left fields type.
Out of left field. Like, even though it was predictable in retrospect, in hindsight, like, after I finished it, I was like, of course it would have ended that way. I didn't know how it was going to end when I was watching it for the first time. And to me, that's a damn good movie, right? That's a good ending for sure.
Oh, yeah.
So here's an important question. Does this movie teach anything believable about life? Like a lot, right?
Yeah. This is like
there's a lot of truth in this movie.
This is somebody's life. Someone has lived this.
I kept looking for factual inaccuracies in this movie, like, oh, this didn't happen like that. This doesn't work like that. That's not how the real world works. And I couldn't find any, because usually when you're dealing with a drug movie, you're like, okay, this was bullshit and this was wrong and that's propaganda. Especially me and Mia being
how they take it as wrong.
Exactly. Especially me being a libertarian, I'm very sensitive to how drug movies are full of shit, because most of them are full of shit. Most drug movies are straight up propaganda, and most of them are preachy and full of shit because they're just trying to teach you some bullshit, like that awful piece of shit Requiem for a Dream, which is a piece of shit, by the way, and also full of shit. And this movie is neither, because it's not preachy, it's not coming at it from some kind of angle. Even though it's a drug movie, it's not a drug sermon movie, it's just a movie that has drugs.
It's not the redemption arc type of movie.
Exactly, or some kind of like moral warning story of like, oh no, drugs will ruin your life. It's just kind of like, hey, this is the world we live in and this is how it works. Drugs were just an element in this story. They weren't trying to preach a fucking drug sermon with this movie, even though you could probably extrapolate one from it. And that's the neat part too, is because, like I said, when the drug movies come at this shit and they're trying to tell you a sermon about drugs, they're trying to make some point about drugs, always some anti-drug point, right?
Oh yeah.
Of course.
Don't take drugs, kids. They're wrong.
Drugs are bad. They'll ruin your life. Even though there are some ruined lives in this story, I don't think that they were necessarily because of drugs so much as they are because of the war on drugs, and that
or the
is
stimulating circumstances of someone's life too.
Exactly, and that's some deep shit, because that's real. That is very true and believable and accurate about life, is that the war on drugs does far more damage to people's lives than drugs themselves do. Because our homegirl that does all these drugs, well, I don't want to give it away, but it ain't drugs that ruins her life.
Oh,
and
no,
it ain't her
it's
life
not.
that gets ruined. So, yeah. Well, damn. Let me just ask you this then. I guess we're already finally at the final question. Would you buy or rent this movie, Danny?
I would buy it.
I would buy it too, especially since it was not a big movie, and I think a lot of people probably missed this movie, because I will even go so far as to say that the politics of the movie business being what it is, I think of this movie probably wasn't picked up and didn't become as big as it was because it was an honest drug movie. Because the only ones that get picked up and put out there are those piece of shit movies, like that piece of shit Jared Leto movie that was, smoking weed will make your arm rot off when it gets you into heroin. And goddamn,
Well, not only that, but you also gotta think this is contradictory to the narrative of a lot of things right now.
Oh, it's very contradictory to the narrative of a lot of things, because most drug movies are made by people that have never used drugs, that are just basically voyeurs, and I say that in the most condescending and critical sense. They're made by voyeurs that don't know shit about what they're talking about, and because they're too chicken shit to ever get high and learn the truth about drugs, so they get high on exploiting drug users and the awful stories that come along with them, just like people that get addicted to watching Intervention, for fuck's sake. Which is also a stupid piece of shit show, by the way, that totally exploits people.
Yeah, not only that, but you also have to stop and think, too. This could actually portray someone's life events that have happened throughout their time in college at one point or another.
Oh, I promise you it does. Like, let me just tell you straight up, okay? You and I both know at least one person whose story that this actually is, and I know two people personally. So, yeah, this is some real shit in this movie, and I love it. I love this movie. I think this is probably one of the best indie films I've ever seen in my life, to be quite frank, and I'm glad that a lot of people don't like it, because the fucked up thing about drugs, the worst thing about drugs, is that the people that know nothing about them are the ones that have the strongest opinions about them, and that's what's wrong with the world in which we live. That's what's wrong with America, to be quite frank, because we live in a country that pretends to be all about freedom, but if you want to know how bullshit that notion really is, just go ask some conservative or some liberal, do you think drugs should be legal? And they'll tell you, oh no, they're evil. They'll just, if you let drugs be legal, then you give somebody the freedom to do drugs, then they're going to go and ruin somebody else's freedom because drugs are bad.
What's the difference between that and what is prescribed?
fucking fucktard in a white coat that has a degree because he read some shit in a book and wrote it back to some other motherfucker that works for the government, did the same goddamn thing, because the truth about America is that people don't really want freedom. They just want somebody they don't like to have less freedom. Because if you ask the average American what's wrong with America, they won't tell you there's not enough freedom. They won't even be honest with you about the fact that there's not really all that much freedom here, to be quite fucking frank. They'll tell you that the thing that's wrong with America is that some fucking group of people that they don't like has too much freedom, and that's what's ruining the world.
People are stupid.
People are fucking stupid. So tune in with us next week while we talk about another great banger of a movie called Arkansas.
Ooh.
Thank you guys so much. Have a blessed day.
Bye.